So someone grabs you by the wrist and pulls you. Eve establishes a rock solid base. She is rooted, and we are not going in my vehicle. Okay, that's a guarantee. However, we are connected by the wrist grab, and my car is over here. Eve's home is way over there, and eventually she would like to go home. And unless she unties this rope as she goes, guess what? He's going with her. So the critical detail, since you don't want to drag this guy to your house, is to detach the grip. Wrist releases, we call these. How many releases? We're going to talk a lot of wrist releases.
Yes, we are.
Lots. You guys are going to forget. You're going to get confused. Then we're going to bring it all back together, and you're going to be incredible wrist release masters. Every possible grip you can imagine, we're going to untie it. But Eve,
Always the same concept, though.
same concept.
Yes.
Talk to us about what they're thinking, though, because they're looking at this and say, "Oh, that's easy. That's easy." They're thinking, right?
Yep. Just one grab, and the first thing that usually comes to mind is, I'll just punch him in the face. I'll just strike him right in the nose. Look at it. It's right there.
Boom. So the problem is, make your base, Eve,
Yep.
solid. This may work, and if she cracks me and drops the guy, congratulations, ladies.
But here's the problem.
Right.
Is that with my base, now in order to punch Henner, you start to see
Well,
where this
stay
is
where you are.
going?
Stay where you are and touch my face. Don't move your body. Just reach. It's not going to happen unless she commits her whole. Now she's going to go in the car and we're gone. Okay.
So the moral of the story is what? We cannot have base and strike at the same time.
Yes.
Now, also, on just on the talk of strikes, right? Again, I might be able to strike him,
Ooh.
right? But again, he still has my wrist, so maybe it will,
Right.
he'll let go.
Boom.
That would be ideal. But I want something that doesn't rely on his pain tolerance.
Very
We
interesting.
don't always know what that's going to be.
Yeah, anytime your escape from a hold, grip, grab, or pin relies on inflicting pain on the attacker in this situation, there are many variables there at play that you may be out of your control. If they're under the influence of drugs or alcohol or incredible adrenaline rush and you hit them, crack them in the face, break their nose, bloody their lip, they may not let go because their grip may not be affected by the pain that you've inflicted. So if your escape is reliant on inflicting pain, there's a degree of uncertainty there that we would rather do without if we could. Not that this is a bad idea, because when it comes to self-defense, guess what? There are no bad ideas, okay? However, if we can get out with more effective leverage, that would be ideal. What else are they thinking? We'll make your base. The kick in the groin is the same thing. Look, boom, which if I stood still and let her do it, maybe it could be effective. But once again, Eve has to compromise her base, and that compromise moved her 5, 6, 7, 8 feet, and we're in isolation. So at that point, you realize, man, the kick quite wasn't worth it because you had to give up the solid base that you worked so hard to establish.
Or I could trip him here, right? Some people,
Trip me?
yeah, I don't know. It's an idea. I just thought of.
She was
thought of
joking,
it.
you guys. She was just joking. That was the funny part. Anyways, so we're here in base. Eve has a solid base, and she wants to free her wrist, you guys. The most common response I get when we teach this all over the world is they just want to rip their arm out. The women just think that they can just rip out. For real. It's not happening, you guys, because Eve's ripping and I'm holding firmly. And if the guy has a strong grip, stronger than yours, and you try to rip out, you're not going to get it, you guys. You're not going to get out. All right. So instead of pulling, watch what Eve does. Push. When you pull, you're relying on power. When you push, you're relying on alavanca, the most important word in the Portuguese language, which is, according to Jiu-Jitsu at least, which is leverage. Alavanca means leverage. And when you push, you're prying your hand out of his grip. Okay, we're gonna do it very slow motion here, Eve. So check it out. She's gonna shuffle in, elbow pry, and disengage. Okay, show us what you're doing here, Eve.
So all I want to do is bring my elbow to Henner's elbow, because that creates an impossible angle for him to grab my own wrist here and keep that grip. Now, how do I do that? I ultimately have to step closer to Henner in order to accomplish that. So again, shuffle, step in, and now my elbow comes in, and look at this right here, right? We call it answer the phone, in case you forget.
Which would be very easy for you guys out there.
Hey.
So go back one more time.
He's on the phone more than I am.
Just not talking about that.
Yeah.
Make your base solid, get low.
Yeah, so the first thing I do is I tighten my wrist, because it makes this, first of all, it protects your wrist here.
Right.
And second of all, it's much easier to escape here.
Right.
Think of it like this. If my wrist is relaxed,
Lamp, yeah.
it's like it becomes
Like a
like a rope. If I had a rope, how would I pry a rope out of
Have you
his
ever
wrist?
seen someone pry or use the alavanca or leverage utilizing a rope to pry? No. If you're going to pry, you wedge that stick in underneath the rock or over the rock and under the object you're trying to lift, and you're prying it. But the rigidity of the stick is not only important, it's everything. So since Eve is exactly doing that, she's prying her hand out of my grip. The rigidity of her entire unit here is very important, as she's pointing out. So a strong fist, tightening all of that.
Strong.
This isn't,
Yeah, strong this way, meaning it won't bend
No goosenecks, you guys,
Yes,
no
goosenecks.
goosenecks.
Tighten that fist.
So
So
solid
first
base.
step is tighten the fist. And now I'm gonna shuffle my legs in and it goes in a straight line here, right? Just a straight up and down, answer the phone and disengage.
Beautiful. So elbow forward, hand back. Okay, so one more time. Some mistakes we commonly see on this,
Yeah.
right, is first of all, the women keep the elbow still and they rip the hand back,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes your partner lets go because they're holding gently, so it still works.
Well,
But
and
that's-
the other reason why that works is, look, you accomplish the same angle. Do you see this? So now my form is aligned with his form, which is the ultimate position we want to get to. But what did that require? It required me moving him,
Right.
which I cannot rely on because he is bigger, heavier, and stronger. So by me trying to pull him, do you see how
Can't.
hard this is? So instead of me moving him, I move me. And that is a general concept and principle we're going to see over and over again throughout this program. So Henner stays where he is.
Watch this.
This will stay exactly still and I move around it.
I didn't move
And we
at all.
still accomplish that elbow to elbow
Go back,
angle
Eve.
here.
That's beautiful. Watch. I stay. Watch. She moves, you guys. She's prying her arm around and under the grabbing force. I'm trying to hold. The fingers just pop right open. It's a beautiful technique. So you have to create that impossible angle. If you pull to do that, you're relying on power. If you push, you're relying on alavanca, which is the most important detail there. Cool. So want to see it from the back angle maybe? So she has good little base here.
So always base first.
Right.
And again, now here's what's a little bit interesting about this is that once I have base,
Yes.
if I lean in to accomplish
Right.
this, what happens to my base? The
You lose it.
angle is gone now, right? So how do we preserve this angle, right? The 45 degrees from my foot up to my head and do this wrist release at the same time? It has to be the shuffle. So watch this. As I shuffle in, you see the angle still remains and now I can drive it in,
Beautiful.
right? But
so nice.
if we do it by leaning, we're gonna go with him. and
Well,
we
yeah,
compromise
you lose
the
your
base there.
45 and you fall over the front base point there. That was very nice. So we're shuffling in. There's also something you did right now that was magnificent that I want to make sure that they see because I felt it, which was when Eve made her approach, when she hold that tight, pull this attention here, please.
Mhm.
When Eve made her shuffle in, if you shuffle in, but you relax the arm, she keeps moving, this keeps getting pulled. So what it's called keeping tension on the rope. When Eve is pulling me and I have a solid base right here, watch. As I shuffle in, I'm going to retract my arm a little, watch. You see that?
Mhm.
So that
It's still,
I made
There's still
I kept
tension.
tension on the rope because what am I doing? I'm buying myself slack in the rope to do what? Pry it out and do my move. So you can't pry unless you have that slack build up and then you release with that elbow pry forward. So important to keep that tension when they're pulling and you make your forward slide adjustment.
That's
Make your
right.
base.
Yep. Now, another common mistake is to think about bringing the elbow to the elbow, but it like comes around the side or over the top, right? Think of it as like there's two walls in between us.
Vertical wall
Vertical
here.
walls here that I have to go in between.
So we're operating in very much of a vertical plane, you guys. When this is happening, it makes the move much more reliable and much more difficult because
Yes.
I can't accommodate as she shuffles in that movement. I simply can't get any taller, and that's why her hand is effectively prying out so well.
One more detail here about the thumb. You see the opening on Henner's hand, right? There's one opening here where his thumb meets his finger. That's ultimately where my escape is going to be. So instead of using the widest part of my wrist to pry open, I want to rotate my thumb to face that opening right here, right? And by doing
Much
that,
narrower.
now the narrow part of my wrist is facing that opening.
Right.
So it's a slight rotation. And now you see it just slides right out, but it's not the wide part, it's the narrow part.
And a
here.
good way to remember that, our friends, here is a thumb to thumb. So my thumb tip is right here. She's gonna line up her thumb tip with my thumb tip. So look at that. So she's coming out right directly the same channel where my fingers come together there. So think thumb to thumb. This is important because it's gonna be utilized in many future variations of different wrist release options and techniques there.
Right.
Cool?
Now, here's one question you might have is right now, when you first practice this, we want you to practice it on the same side arm,
Mhm.
right here. Because now we understand the linear concept of this move and how ideally that's what we want is to find the elbow.
Right.
But if they do grab with a cross grip, right, what changes? First of all, always align our base, right? Same arm as leg. And now it's the exact same move. Exact same move. My elbow is finding his and I'm pushing into it. And again, the thumb finds the opening.
Thumb to thumb.
Thumb to thumb. There we go.
Beautiful.
So it's the exact same. The only tricky part, and this is kind of a mistake that could possibly be made, is if you don't find thumb to thumb and you try to bring the elbow in, do you see what happens?
Useless. Because the
Done.
fulcrum of the wrist release is entirely on the web of the attacker's hand. So when I'm grabbing here, if Eve's hand goes under my wrist, she is not fulcruming on my web anymore. Versus when her thumb is here, now watch slowly, freeze. Look at that, fulcrum right there. That's your prying mechanism, look, to get the arm out. You guys understand? So it's important that that thumb face, once again, the thumb, even on the cross grip, but not to be recommended, not to be practiced. And the very first time, it's much easier when you go same side or same side. She switches her stance, she shuffles in, and she goes. A lot of people have questions about where your stance lands. And similar to the push and pull base that we discussed in the previous lesson, when someone is pulling an arm, if I'm square, Eve's stance can be inside of my legs. If I'm bladed and I'm pulling, she's gonna step right to the outside while she employs her technique. So once again, Eve, make your base. So here, if she shuffles in, watch her leg. It goes right outside of mine, giving her less chance of off balance or losing her balance or getting tripped in the process. So this is called standard wrist release one-on-one. One hand grabbing one hand with the palm facing up. We're gonna see inverted wrist releases. We're gonna see two-on-one wrist releases, two-on-two wrist releases, more combinations than you care to know right now. What's the bottom line? Practice this because this prying concept is the foundation for all wrist releases. And remember, if you're pushing, you're prying. If you're pulling, you're relying on strength and power, which against a much stronger, more athletic opponent may not be to your advantage. Cool? Are they ready?
Okay, yeah, what's the drill right now? So Henner is gonna grab my wrist, and again, just like everything, you don't have to death grip each other yet. We'll get there, right? We'll be fighting each other in no time, but we don't have to, like we always say, we're learning to fight. We don't have to fight to learn. So right now, he's grabbing my wrist just enough so that I can feel the
Base.
pop, right? Always base first, slide in,
Look.
there, and then we'll
Nice.
switch sides. And then I'll say, Henner, grab me on the other side, strong base, shuffle in. And there we
That's
go.
it. And if you guys rely on ripping your hand out and you can't do it calmly and easily, it's wrong.
That's
So
right.
watch it again and understand, where am I missing the detail?
If
Why
you're-
am I
If
using
you're
so much
doing
strength?
this- If you're doing this quickly in the beginning, chances are you're relying on power a little
That's
bit
true,
too much.
that's
Do
true.
it as slow as possible so that you know it is 100% leverage and not any bit of that quick power that you want to apply.
There it is, you guys. If you can do it slowly, calmly, and with minimal energy, what does that say about the effectiveness of Alavanca and the actual technique you just learned?
It's everything.
Have fun. So you guys, we need to be real. If this attacker is serious about his career, he's not gonna grab your wrist with one hand and pull. He's gonna grab with both hands and pull. And the problem is, if Eve tries the same technique, no effectiveness. Why? Because the opening that existed in the grip previously doesn't exist anymore when the second hand comes in and closes the door. There is no exit channel that is as open, obvious, and blatant as the one was in the previous slice. So it's called two-on-one, standard grip, two-on-one. If the woman cannot pry her elbow forward, Eve, what are they gonna do? Same as before?
Not same as before. You use two hands, I use two hands.
Boom, and she's out. Okay, let's talk about some details here. Tell us exactly what you did.
Yeah, so it's actually the exact same movement that we just did. The only difference is now I'm using this other hand to help me pry. Again, I'm not pulling myself out. I'm helping myself pry the elbow forward.
Big
more
detail
time.
there.
So the hand comes over, I grab my own fist, and now if a shuffle is needed, I will shuffle in, and the elbow comes right in between Henner's elbows, just almost right to his chest, all the way up, and now we've disengaged from here.
Major.
Yep, so base first, always. Now the hand comes in, again, strong fist with your hand, especially with this one, because now especially because you're grabbing your fist, now we
Right.
really need this to become that stick that we're prying out of something here.
Absolutely.
So
And
strong.
certainly and totally unacceptable is to open this hand and grab onto your fingers or palm or like,
Yes.
you
like
guys, just don't do it. Just
a
don't do
Unsafe,
it.
not that effective. The other thing we don't want to do is hold on to their wrist. I see this sometimes in
Yeah,
practice.
two ladies who
Like-
teach brand new students. They're like, all right, let's practice. And they both grab each other. You got me.
Yeah,
you're-
yeah.
Wait, who's the attacker? Okay,
Who's
so I
attacking you?
grab Eve's wrist. She makes a fist. She solidifies her base. As she shuffles in, she grabs.
I
Look,
come over the top and in between his arms.
we call it the
See
V. We
forearm?
call it the V, you guys. The V of my arms.
Right
Yes,
there.
you have to keep your reaching arm in the V of their arms instead of going under the V and ripping that way, because now you're pulling in the direction of my 8 fingers instead of the direction of my 2 thumbs. And 2 thumbs are certainly weaker than 8 fingers, especially when you use the alavanca of prying your elbow in the direction of the opponent here, as Eve did so well.
Mhm.
Yeah, so show us what it looks like when you pull instead of push.
Yes,
It just the thumb kind of gets stuck right there.
Yes.
It just, it's
especially when they have a strong grip. Now, here's what it might look like if they're doing it with a partner who's going easy on you.
Hiya!
Nailed it. Nailed it.
No, you didn't nail it, you guys.
Yeah.
Listen, if that happens because your partner's going gentle on your wrist, as they should, which therein lies the challenge, right? When the person is attacking calmly and gently in the learning environment, you're allowed to get away with more improper or inaccurate technique than you would if someone was death gripping your wrist. So there might be an inclination for them to say, well, let's practice full grip right now. We don't suggest that.
Yeah,
We
and
suggest
how
you start slow.
How we compromise for that is by doing it slowly. So even though they're grabbing it slowly, that means we do our escape slowly and
true.
controlled as well, right?
Right.
We're both going easy, especially in the beginning. So he's grabbing here. Notice there's no quick speed about this yet, right? I'm shuffling in and it still works. He's holding, we're going slow, pop. And you want to feel that pop, right? That's the only thing you want them to hold just enough so that there's that point where they can't hold anymore. And make sure that you try it, right? You also try it on your partner.
Right.
So even if you're working with a man, grab his
She
wrist.
pulls a
And it's
little.
just good to see how effective this really is
So
here.
I found my base right here. Watch, I may shuffle in here as I reach and I grab. And then once again, watch my elbow right here. Guys, push in on this a little bit. You're gonna see my elbow once again. If my elbow stays and I do this, fail. But if I do this, watch my elbow. Look my elbow. Pry. Talk about how that feels on your hands.
It hurts.
Your fingers get jacked backwards and you simply don't want to hold on anymore.
Not hold on
You
anymore.
break your fingers and your wrist if you were to keep that grip, so you won't. So that's a good indicator that they're doing it correctly, is when even when they do it slow, you feel like your fingers are getting jammed, shackled backwards, and there's no way you're gonna keep that grip in the process.
That's right.
All right,
Yeah.
you guys, we can practice one on both sides, a very easy one. And once again, we can't choose which side the attacker grabs our wrist on. So for this one, we'll practice both sides to build that reflex and get rock solid with it. So the little base,
Mhm.
take your time, shuffle in, watch the elbow, boom. Oh, and and a safety tip, I should say, and a most common mistake,
point.
tell them, because you did it
Yes,
one
I
time.
did. What the punch.
Boom.
So this is also how you'll learn naturally not to pull it all the way out and to instead to push instead to pull. Because if you pull and it finally works, pop,
Boom.
right in the face. So
got herself.
unfortunately, that's how we learn,
That
right?
was
But
crazy. She got
even
mad.
like-
She got mad at me when she punched herself in the
it's
face.
always your fault, right?
So
how
you
this
guys
works.
don't blame your partner. Okay, like why'd you let go so fast? No, why did you pull instead of pry? But the truth is, there are no such thing as good or bad students, only good or bad teachers. So in that sense, it was my fault. Much love, but fortunately, she recovered beautifully. And here we are,
Now
teaching
we're
you guys the
teaching you.
proper technique, learning from our own mistakes. You guys, elbow goes forward. If you're ripping your hand away, you're missing the boat on this one. And we got to redial it and watch the video again to make sure it's all good to go. Cool. Let's practice. These are called 2-on-1 standard grip. Standard grip, which means palm up. 2-on-1 wrist release. We're going to do both sides and then switch roles. Again, make sure both people get to practice. Have fun. You guys, the wrist release family is out of control. And the more you get to know it, the more you realize it's kind of like the Gracie family. But in the standard branch of the wrist release family, there are 3 siblings: 1-on-1, 2-on-1, and their little brother, 2-on-2. Okay, here's how 2-on-2 looks. Check it out. Standard grips, 2-on-2. And
What might
yeah.
somebody think from this, right?
I feel
We
like
already
when we-
learned.
And when would this happen? This is more like a, hey, come here. I want to talk to you, like a disrespect.
It's more of a control
Yes,
aspect
it's-
rather than trying. Well, I mean, and it could possibly also be an isolation attempt,
Yes.
but it also just feels very
Listen,
controlling.
it's one of these, yeah.
I can't do anything with this. I can't use my hands. It's
Yeah,
very,
trying
very
to take your hands out of the fight. They're trying to show dominance, power, whether they're trying to move you or not, we don't know. But still, in every sense, this is unacceptable for anyone to grab someone in this fashion with this level of intensity and intention. We need to be able to handle with this and deal with this 100%, okay? So check it out. Here we go. 1, 2, and she's out. Let's talk about it.
Mhm. So I establish my base, elbow forward, switch sides, and disengage.
Boom.
What do? I'm doing the exact same thing, but just one at a time.
Mhm.
So I establish my strong base, and now using my legs, right? Using the pivot for my legs, watch my hips. Everything comes in.
Boom.
Answer the phone, right? So one is gone. Now I need to focus on the other one. And now watch the rotation. Elbow.
It's so major. Let's do it again. The rotation is everything because that's what allows Eve's elbows to approach me enough to get that pry action. Here we go.
So strong base. Now let's talk about this base for a moment. I am right-handed. So my natural stance should be with my right foot back, because if I were to strike, I would want to use my right
Strong
side,
side,
my
mhm.
strong side. So whereas the other wrist releases we just did,
He dictates.
I can't choose my base. He chooses it for me, right?
Because
He-
your base must correspond with the arm that they're pulling on. But if they choose 2 wrists and they're
This-
pulling both
This
equally,
is unique in that I can choose my base. here,
right?
Right? So I want to choose my strong side back, which is my right leg. So strong side first is going to release, opposite side, and now you can disengage from here.
And like she mentioned, these are 2 individual 1-on-1 standard releases, because if you try to do both at the same time,
Mhm.
right? If you're here and she tries to do both, the problem is Eve's shoulders cannot rotate deliberately and deeply enough to permit her elbow to reach my elbow. She doesn't get the maximum reach, right? It's almost like if you're standing right there where you are and I do this, watch, don't move. I can't touch her, but watch my shoulders twist. Touch, touch. How was I able to touch her easier? And I didn't even lean forward. I'm only pivoting. That pivot, it makes your body longer and your reach longer. Was that too aggressive?
Yes.
Those pivots really extend your elbow reach, you guys. And that little additional reach you get from that rotation is how you answer the phone and how you get that nice pry, maximum alavanca, and ultimately your escape. Here we go.
First step, choose your base, right? Strong side back. Now, strong side first,
Oh,
release
oh,
here,
big rotations.
and just practice disengaging for now. Later, we're going to talk about what we can do to follow up with these escapes.
Right. Solid base. 1, 2, and she's out. Look, turn, and you're out. Let me try, please. So she grabs my wrist. She gets good grips right here. Remember, if you need to rotate within her grip like that, your thumb to the alignment, remember, thumb to thumb, my thumb to her thumb, tip to tip right here. And then once you have that alignment, back arm first. Look, strong side
Look
first.
at that hip rotation.
Boom, touching, hand up, elbow forward, hand back. And in the future, we're going to learn how to follow up with strikes from here. And that's why we're requesting that you guys release your strong arm first, because when you release the second hand, you're going to be locked and loaded right here to deliver a beautiful surprise to his ear. Okay, are they ready?
I think so. So that was standard 2-on-2, right? The third brother. And go ahead, make sure that you grab each other, choose your base wisely, your side wisely, and then strong side first.
They're ready. Let's do it, you guys. Then we'll meet the rest of the family.
Bottom line is, whether you know the person or not, no one should ever grab you by the wrist after the age of like 5.
Even then,
Right?
unacceptable, you guys, that someone grabs you like this.
Yeah, and we should be getting so proficient at these wrist releases that it's almost like even he can't even really find the angle to grab my wrist, right? So it's just such a comforting feeling to know that no one can touch me inappropriately. I can keep my own space and I don't have to gouge his eyes out either.
Boom. Diffuse the situation, you
Yes.
guys. And there are a few techniques in jujitsu that embody the principle of alavanca, the principle of leverage, as entirely obvious as this one. I mean, it's right there. You are prying your grip right out of his. And this is only possible if you understand the concept of pushing, right? So pushing equals prying, pulling equals relying on strength, power, and athleticism that we may not have as an advantage over our opponent. So when you think of wrist releases, all I want you to think is wrist release, push. Where's the pushing? Where's the pry? Where's the alavanca opportunity in this? And if you understand that, then you understand the wrist release family of techniques.